Hello everyone. Well, I'm sure you've heard at least a little something about the upcoming solar eclipse on Monday, April 8th, but now that it's getting closer, I want to take the time to break down what we can expect in Northwest Indiana and also where you should go to have the best experience. So let's start with the big picture. So everyone in the United States is at least going to experience a partial eclipse, but only those in the 115-mile wide path of totality are going to experience a total solar eclipse. And a total solar eclipse is a much more impressive experience than a partial solar eclipse. So in Northwest Indiana, no, we are not in the path of totality. Even Newton and Jasper County, no, not in the path of totality. So we are only going to get a partial solar eclipse. Now, we're awfully close. More than 90% of the sun is going to be covered by the moon. But that's not enough. If you want the really cool experience, the jaw-dropping experience that everyone talks about, that black hole in the sky, the white glow of the sun's corona around that black hole, you have to be in the path of totality. That is not going to happen in Northwest Indiana. So if you can, please get in the path of totality. But maybe you can't on Monday, April 8th. Maybe you're stuck working. So let's talk about what we're going to see in Northwest Indiana first, and then we'll talk about what you'll see if you get in that path of totality. So beginning around 12:51 in the afternoon, we're using Valparaiso here as our example city because it's kind of the heart of Northwest Indiana. Technically, the timing here is going to vary by 30 seconds to a minute, and the amount of the sun that's going to be covered might vary by about 1% or so, depending on where you are in Northwest Indiana. But basically, this is, on average, what folks in Northwest Indiana are going to experience. There's not going to be much variation. So about 12:51 in the afternoon, the moon is going to start to move in front of the sun. But at 12:51, you're not going to notice anything unless you've got your eclipse glasses on and you're looking up at the sun, and you'll start to notice a little black sliver showing up in front of the sun. But the time I really want you to be outside, especially if you're short on time and can't watch the entirety of this partial eclipse, go outside at 2:08 in the afternoon on Monday, April 8th. Because at 2:08 in the afternoon, 96% of the sun is going to be covered by the moon. And I know that sounds like a lot. And if you look up at the sun with your eclipse glasses on, you're going to see 96% of the sun black. And only 4% exposed. But that 4% absolutely makes a difference. You're going to be surprised how bright it still is outside. Now, it's not going to be as bright as usual at 2:08 in the afternoon. What it's going to be like at 2:08 when you step outside, you're going to step outside and go, what's going on here? Something's weird. Because it's going to be like somebody took one of those dimmer light switches and turned the lights down, but not off. If you want that flip of a switch experience where it's dark and you suddenly see sunset and twilight hours, you got to be in the path of totality. That's not going to happen in Northwest Indiana, but it's not going to be as bright as usual. But you're only going to see 96% of the sun covered if you've got your eclipse glasses on, because even with just 4% of the sun exposed, it is not going to be safe to look at this partial solar eclipse unless you're wearing your eclipse glasses. So even at 2:08 in the afternoon, you're going to have to keep those eclipse glasses on. You cannot remove your eclipse glasses at any point during this partial solar eclipse in Northwest Indiana. And after 2:08, less and less of the sun is going to be covered, and the partial eclipse in Northwest Indiana is going to come to an end about 3:22 in the afternoon. But if you stay in Northwest Indiana, you're probably going to be underwhelmed by this experience. So if you can, please get in the path of totality. And here are the places closest to Northwest Indiana, down south in Indiana, that are going to experience totality, that are going to see 100% of the sun covered by the moon. They're going to have all the fun, and you don't want to miss out. So head to a place like Bloomington, Columbus, Jennings, Muncie, Terre Haute. Notice Fort Wayne, not in the path of totality. So don't head to Fort Wayne. I think a lot of folks probably think in Indianapolis in their mind. If you're wondering, what's the closest place to Northwest Indiana where you can experience totality? Well, driving down I-65 South, the first town that's in the path of totality on I-65 South is Thorntown, Indiana. So at least get to Thorntown, Indiana. It's about a 2-hour drive from Northwest Indiana. And Thorntown, Indiana is in the path of totality, and they're going to experience totality for 1 minute and 45 seconds. But if you can, go a little bit farther down I-65. Indianapolis, sure, that'll be better. But if you can get just south of Indianapolis, if you can get to Franklin, Indiana. Why Franklin, Indiana? Because Franklin, Indiana is right in the center of the path of totality. And really, that's where you want to be, the center of the path of totality, because you get to experience being under the moon's shadow for the longest amount of time. So look at the difference in the timing here. The timing of totality, how long you'll be under the moon's shadow, 4 minutes and 2 seconds in Franklin compared to that 1 minute and 45 seconds in Thorntown. So you get to experience the really cool experience for an extra 2 minutes and 15 seconds. An extra 2 minutes and 15 seconds to take pictures, soak it all in, and trust me, you're going to want to soak it all in and experience this for as long as possible. I saw the 2017 total solar eclipse, and it was absolutely incredible. This is an experience that you will not forget. So Franklin is an extra hour south on I-65. You're going to have to drive 3 hours from Northwest Indiana to get there. But I think it's worth it because you get to experience totality for a longer amount of time. So let's break down, if you make it to Franklin, what the experience is going to be like compared to Northwest Indiana. Now keep in mind, once you drive out of Northwest Indiana, you're going to be in Eastern time. So that's why the timing here looks dramatically different. The timing I showed you earlier, really it's about the same, but Eastern time. Franklin, Indianapolis are in Eastern time, so keep that in mind when you're thinking about timing. So about 1:50 Eastern time in the afternoon, same thing in Franklin is going to happen like here in Northwest Indiana. The partial eclipse is going to begin. You're not going to notice anything. Nothing different about the partial eclipse in Franklin than Valparaiso or anywhere else in Northwest Indiana. But what absolutely is going to be different is the fact that you are in the path of totality. And that for 4 minutes, the sun is going to be 100% covered. And what a sight it is. And because the sun is going to be 100% covered for those 4 minutes of totality, beginning at 3:05 in the afternoon in Franklin until 3:09, it is safe to take off those eclipse glasses and look up at the sun and just see that incredible, I cannot stress enough, sight in the sky. But only for those 4 minutes. As soon as totality ends at 3:09, in the afternoon, if you want to see the second half of the partial eclipse, got to put those eclipse glasses right back on. And the partial eclipse in Franklin will come to an end at 4:23. But keep in mind, it's only between 3:05 and 3:09 that the really cool experience is going to be happening in Franklin. So not for very long, but you'll remember it. Now, finally, before we wrap up, we got to talk about one thing that might interfere with the show, and that's cloud cover. Because if it's a cloudy, overcast day, even if you're in the path of totality, the experience is not going to be nearly as impressive. And yeah, it'll get darker, but just like on a cloudy day, how you don't notice sunset as much, well, you're not going to notice the eclipse as much if it's a cloudy day. And we can't forecast what the clouds are going to be like yet for this April 8th, but we can look at what's happened historically, and that's what we're doing with this map. So we're looking at April 8th, going all the way back to 1979. Specifically, we're looking at the early afternoon hours. How much cloud cover do we see in the early afternoon on April 8th? And you add up every April 8th since 1979, this is what you get. And notice, more cloud cover to the north and east, less to the south and west. And that's why there's been a lot of buzz about Texas being the best place to see this solar eclipse, because historically Texas sees the fewest clouds on April 8th. And unfortunately, whether you're staying in Northwest Indiana or driving south into central and southern Indiana, we are on the cloudier side. And historically, from Franklin on up to Northwest Indiana, we see about 65 to 69% of the sky covered by clouds in the early afternoon on April 8th. And if you're wondering what 65 to 69% translate to, we would call that partly to mostly cloudy skies. So that does mean it is more likely that we will have cloudy skies on April 8th than clear skies. It's happened. We could have clear skies, and we will absolutely hope for that. But the reality is there are probably going to be clouds around. But at least historically, partly to mostly cloudy skies, some gaps, that's better than an overcast day. So most likely, if we had to make a forecast right now, we would call for partly to mostly cloudy skies. But obviously, there could be variation. So we will be watching this cloud cover forecast very closely. We'll keep you posted. But for now, keep your fingers crossed for no clouds on Monday, April 8th.